Good morning. I, Bear with me on this mic because I'm not a mic person. I could take it off, and most of you would be able to hear me because I talk pretty loud. When you're deaf, you talk loud. So if I get too loud, I apologize for it, but I'm deaf, no doubt about it. I got a little bit of history and background here before I get to my main message that I want to talk to you today. So some of this history that I'm going to tell you is obviously, I imagine most of it you've already heard several times. You know about it. And I'm going to skip a lot of stuff. I'm just going to kind of roll through some stuff. There's a lot of really great points that I'm not making in this history part because I want to get to my main message. I'll talk about Moses first. Born in Egypt to Hebrew parents. We know the story about Moses. Then they were going to, Pharaoh's going to order a kill for all the male children. And so they take Moses, put him in a basket in the Nile, and turn him loose. And we know who ends up finding Moses, Pharaoh's daughter. And so she, I don't understand how that works out, but she raises him in the courtyard. It seems kind of funny that they wouldn't wonder where the Moses came from, but that's God, him working in action. Okay? When he grows older, he sees an Egyptian fighting with one of his fellow brothers, and he gets anxious. Moses does, gets mad, and he kills the Egyptian. Okay? So after he kills the Egyptian, and later on Pharaoh finds out that Moses did kill an Egyptian, and so Moses flees, like all of us, run. So he flees to Midian, and he's living out in the desert, in the forest, not desert, living in the forest around Midian for about 40 years. He's living out there. And then all of a sudden, God contacts Moses after 40 years. He contacts him through a burning bush through an angel. And basically what is happening is God wants Moses. God has heard his Israelites crying for help, and God wants Moses to be that help through God. And so this angel talks to him through this burning bush at first, and then God ends up talking to Moses. And we know the rest of the story, like I said. Moses has a speech impediment, doesn't speak very well. And he's like, why me? I mean, I'm a nobody. And I can't even talk, and you want me to go save the Israelites from slavery? And he's like, yeah, it's you. God, is what God's telling him. It's you that I need to do that for. And he wants to save them and send them to the land of the milk and honey. Well, God compromises a little bit, and he says, okay, I'll use Aaron to be your speaker. He'll talk for you because Aaron's a good speaker. And so he does it in that manner. And that's what ends up happening. Well, they go to Pharaoh, and they try to get to free those Israelites. And Pharaoh's like, no way. You know, he knows he's got slaves. Why would I let him turn them loose? So he's not going to let it happen. Well, so God intervenes, and we end up with 10 different judgments against Pharaoh and the Egyptians in order to break Pharaoh so he'll let his people out of captivity. Now, like I said, I'm leaving out a lot of great points in this whole story that is in Exodus that we're talking about. And doing those 10 things, I'll just run through real quickly what they were. Turn water into blood, the frogs, the lice, the flies, the plague on the cattle, the boils, the hail, the locust, the 3 days of darkness, and then the final straw, the death of all the firstborn. Okay? And that's what they're going through. Pharaoh, to try to break Pharaoh so that he would release it. And that's what it took. When all that happened, they finally, okay, I'll turn him loose. Then we know God works through Moses again, because they get to the Red Sea and God parts the Red Sea through Moses. He uses Moses for that example. We all know that God is the one in charge that is doing this. They part it. They go through. They escape. They're wandering around. They get close to the mountains, and then Moses goes up to the mountain. Like I said, I'm speeding things up. He gets up in the mountain. He's up there for 40 days with God. He comes down from the mountain with after those 40 days, and God tells him, he said, your people are not doing good. Well, what has happened is the people that for 40 days are wondering what happened to Moses. I mean, if your mom and dad left for 40 days, you would be in the same situation. What happened? Where are they at? It must not be good. Well, so they talk Aaron into taking all the jewelry and taking the gold, and then make this golden calf. So God tells Moses what's going on, and you better go down. God is furious, by the way, about what's going on. Moses come down. Moses is furious. He's mad. He's so mad, when he came down with the 10 Commandments, which is what my message is basically going to be about today, the 10 Commandments. He comes down with those 10 Commandments, and he is so mad, he throws them on the ground, and they break. Okay? Now, I got one more little deal before I get to the 10 Commandments. That gives us a little history of what's going on with Moses and the 10 Commandments. Okay? That's why I wanted you to review of what you already know. I was approached by a man a few weeks back, and I'm going to approach you with the same question that this man approached me with, and see how you react. It's kind of crazy. The guy is a Christian man, by the way, no doubt about it. The guy comes up to me and he says, we talk a little bit of Christian stuff for a while, and then all of a sudden he says, I got to ask you this question. He said, if Donald Trump landed in your pasture in a helicopter and came to you and asked you, would you be his vice president running mate, which we know he's got one, but this was the question. He asked you, I'm asking you what he asked me. I'm asking you, if he did that to you, will you be my vice president running mate? Think of your answer to yourself. What would you answer him? Didn't take me long. Didn't take me long at all. I was like, no. I said, it's exactly what I said. I said, no, I'm an idiot. And I said, I don't know near enough about our government to try to be a vice president and help him run the United States. Okay? Now, you don't need to tell me your answer, but hopefully you had an answer. Okay? After I left, and I get away from this guy, I started thinking to myself, and it kind of hurt. Because I started thinking to myself, did I put God first? I immediately answered, no. No way. Did I go to prayer and ask God, what should I do? Or did I just spontaneous, this is my answer? And it kind of bothered me. then I got to thinking to some degree. I tried to help myself out with my bother and say, God made me. I mean, he doesn't speak to me like he speaks to some people all the time, and so I'm assuming that he made me the man I am, and that's the answer that he wanted me to give. Like I said, I tried to make it sound better, but I didn't go to God. I felt bad about it. Okay? It bothered me. It's just something for you to think about. You know, Moses didn't want to go. Send somebody else. And God worked on him. Jonah didn't want to go. And God worked on him. So, in our lives, we have to think about those kind of things. All right? Now, for the real message that I wanted to give you. The Ten Commandments. Okay? I am giving you a lesson today on the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are in Exodus 20, and they are also in Deuteronomy 5. That's the Old Testament. We know that. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to relate the Old Testament to the New Testament, because we are a New Testament church. And so I'm going to explain to you what I feel like is the Ten Commandments exist to us in our lives today. They didn't change. And I'll prove that to you through some of these passages. So some of this you're going to have to bear with me, because I will use, so that you're not getting my opinion, I will use the Bible verbatim and read several passages to you what we're talking about. Okay? First off, Jesus didn't come to do away or replace the Ten Commandments. Okay? In fact, he said that very directly. Matthew 5:17 to 20. It says, I better get some glasses. Verse 17. Oh, where am I at? Think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Jesus came to fulfill them. Okay? For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not an iota nor a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Whoever then relaxes one of the least of these commandments, you got that? Whoever relaxes one of the least of those commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Wow. But he who does them and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Okay? That was Matthew 5. And then I would like to read John 15:10. John 15:10 says, if you keep my commandments, okay, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Proof. Right there. I mean, I could quit right now. And that's proof right there that Jesus believes today we still are held responsible for the Ten Commandments. That is our lives. Okay? First commandment, you shall have no other gods before you. Okay? Is God number one in your life? You know, I can remember being out there and listening to Mike preach, and he made a comment that stuck in my head. You think God's number one in your life? Look at your checkbook. Look at your time. Remember him saying that? Look at them. What do we do with our time? What do we do with our money? Is God really number one in my life? Something to think about. Matthew 22, 36 to 40. Most of these passages are in Matthew, if you want to follow me. So Matthew 22, 36 says, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Look around. We're all neighbors. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. You know, it's easy to love your neighbor when it's your family sometimes. You know, we all have squabbles. We all have fights in our lives. It's no doubt about it. That's the way we are. We are human. We're going to mess up. I've made that comment earlier. So in our struggles that we have, the different opinions that we have, you have to ask God for help. Because without him, people don't make it. No doubt about it. We have to call on God in times in our lives. And when we call on God, it's not just in bad times. We should be calling on God in the great times that we have. You know, like Mike would always say when it rains, fill the church, praise the Lord. That's what we should be doing in things like that happen in our lives. It's not just always, I want, I need, I want, I need. No, it's, what can you get from me, God? What can I do to help you to let people understand the love that you have? It's kind of like this, the neighbor thing I was talking about in Matthew 7:3. Why do you look at the speck that's in your brother's eyes? You remember this one? That's us. It's easier for me to look at you and see what kind of problems you have, but not notice the log that's in my eye? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of like in my house we have this saying, I'm me and you're you. That's what we say. I'm me and you're you. When things happen, sometimes we make that comment. So in other words, what's that mean? Doesn't apply to me. I don't have a log in my eye. Well, I can't see, so something's in my eye. You know, obviously we do. We get to that nature sometime. All right, move on. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself a graven image. In the Old Testament, the two most graven images, things that I think about, is when Elijah is challenging the priests that are for Baal, the idol Baal. And we know that story. So this is just a quick review of that story. What happens? Well, they get the sacrifice and the wood around the sacrifice for the priest of Baal. And the priest of Baal start praying. They start in the morning, and they're praying. Baal, start the fire, start the fire, start the fire. And they do this all day long. It's all day. Well, why do you think it's all day? Because Baal's not a god. We know the God that we serve, and that's the rest of the story. Elijah comes in. Elijah puts his sacrifice up there, puts the wood around, asks the people to soak it with wood. They put 3 barrels of wood, 3 different times. They put wood. They had wood, all right. They put 3 barrels of water on the wood, soaking it down. They did that 3 different times to really soak it up good so that it wouldn't catch on fire. You ever tried to start a fire that was just rained the night before and you try to start the fire? Doesn't work very good. Well, they soaked it. They built a trench around it so that the water was engulfed clear around it all the way over. Elijah prays to our God, and poof, it consumes everything. The fire consumes the rocks, the wood, the sacrifice, the water. It consumes. That's one of them that make for yourself a graven image. The Baal is a graven image. Doesn't work. God tells us don't do that. All right? The second image that I think of is when Aaron, that I've already told you about, with the golden calf, the idol, and they're going to worship the golden calf. Those are the 2 kind of things that stick into my mind about it out of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, here we go again. I told you I was going to do that. John 4:23. John 4:23. It says, but the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for such the Father seeks to worship him. You're worshiping God, not an idol. So, 2nd commandment, don't make for yourself a graven image. Right? 3rd commandment, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. When I'm teaching Sunday school class, the kids that I've had in there, I've said this a lot. If you're going to say freaking, you might as well say the other word. You're thinking it. I don't like that. I don't like the slang words for cuss words. As a person, as an adult, as a coach or whatever, I do not like cussing. I never have. Matter of fact, when I was track coach, I catch a kid cussing, they had run some extra. That's just the way it was. I grew up that way. I'm sorry. When I got caught cussing, it was a little different. Mom didn't say, take off running. Here's the bar of soap. Take a bite out of the bar of soap, and I'm not exaggerating. You took a bite out of the bar of soap. Now, you didn't chew it up and swallow it, but you did have to bite off a bar of soap. That's the way I was brought up. Don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. You know, he's a loving God. Matthew 5, this is the New Testament part, 5:33. 5:33. And again, you have heard that it was said to the men of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simple, yes or no. You don't have to swear, yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil. Okay, 4th commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Today's the Sabbath day. Okay? Part of my research looking up said there was nothing in the Bible that talks about the Sabbath day in the New Testament. I feel like I proved them wrong because I found a couple verses that I felt like were talking about the Sabbath in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, it talks about Exodus 20. It says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. We all know that. Okay? The New Testament, Mark 2:27 and 28. Mark 2. Sorry, I'm slow. 27, 28. Okay. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. And then I had Hebrews 4, 9 to 10. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God, for whoever enters God's rest also ceases from his labors, as God did from his labor. Fifth commandment, honor your father and mother, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. That's the fifth commandment. Honor Ma and Pa, right? Well, there ain't a lot of kids here that should hear that. They're over there now, but you were a kid. Did you honor Ma and Pa when you was growing up? I have to honestly say that I probably tried to, because out of respect for my mom and my dad. I tried to honor them, but I was a typical teenager. They weren't near as smart as I was. You know, when my girls grew up, we had a little magnet that went on the refrigerator when they were teenagers, and it said, why don't all of life's problems happen when I'm a teenager and I know everything? Right? You were a teenager. We know so much more when we're a teenager. Okay? So that's the way we encounter, that's the way we think about things. All right. I am going to stop and finish with a little bit of thing right here. I only got through 5 commandments. We have 5 left. And I don't know, we'll see what happens. I don't know if I'm the one preaching next Sunday or somebody else is. It really doesn't matter, because guess what you have? The Bible. And you can do research just as easy as I can do research and look up situations about the 10 Commandments in the New Testament and how they related with the Old Testament in that situation. Okay? So I'm going to close with this one little comment. And if I do preach again, I'll probably use this one again. John 14, 15. John 14, 15. That's New Testament. My class laughs at me. I'm kind of like Moses. I have this bad talking deal, and I'd say Testament all the time. New Testament. Okay, that is it. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Okay? That's what Jesus has asked us to do. Keep his commandments. And there's more than 10 of them. My researchers, there's over 1,000 of type of commands. But the 10 is the ones that we know in our heart, and they probably cover the 1,000, one way or another. All right? If you have a decision to make today, if you feel like something you want to come down front to talk about or pray about, you are welcome to do that today as we close and sing the final song.